There are some great build guides for ESO out there, but they often include mythics or trial sets that might feel out of reach for new players. And you're going to need some gear to get you started in the Elder Scrolls Online. This video will show you how to go from Novice to Endgame. Welcome back, heroes of Tamriel. I'm Cal, and like many of you, when I was first starting out in ESO, I looked up build guides for my character. But like most guides you'll find out there, they all included items that aren't so easily acquired for new or novice players. So what exactly are you supposed to do before you can get your hands on arena weapons, mythic items, or trial sets in ESO as a fresh level 50? The good news here is that you don't need a perfect endgame build to contribute in group content, and there are a number of strong sets that you can collect right now on your own to get started. So if you're just starting out in ESO or still working on your in-game setup, there's a path forward that should be accessible for everyone watching this video. So today I'll share my 8 favorite starter DPS sets, what I think makes them solid choices, and how you can add them to your collection. So let's start with these solo farmable sets that work great early on and do occasionally make appearances in in-game builds as well. You can collect these sets early, then swap them out for more powerful sets later on. Now, I'll be focusing primarily on Overland sets and craftable sets, as you can farm them or craft them yourself, or buy them from other players via guild traders, or even just trade with friends. While some of these sets are sourced from DLC zones, you are not required to own the DLC to actually equip the set, so if you can get your hands on it, you can use it. First up is the Briarheart set. This medium set is a personal favorite of mine that is solid early game for pure DPS builds, but it also gets reused in many solo builds for the passive healing it provides. Briarheart is an Overland set from Hrothgar and is usually my top pick for beginner stamina DPS builds because of the combo of bonus damage and passive healing from that 5-piece bonus. Overland sets like Briarheart are collected from bosses in the zone that they are found in. So Delve bosses are going to drop the waist and feet pieces, world bosses will drop the head, chest, legs, and weapons, public dungeon bosses drop shoulders, hands, and weapons, and then jewelry comes from either world events, trials, or in this case, daily quests and treasure chests. Every zone has 3 Overland sets which share a loot table, but the drops are curated, so if you bind them along the way, you won't get a duplicate until you've completed the entire collection. Next up is the Swamp Raider set. This stamina-centric set is a great option for builds that deal primarily poison and disease damage. Even though this one comes from the base game zone of Shadowfen, it has made its way into many of my Warden builds over the years because so many Warden skills deal poison or disease damage. Now that I'm subclassing Gravelord, even more of my kit would benefit from the 5-piece bonus of Swamp Raider. And as a result, I've recently reincorporated this one into my in-game build. And if you're using mostly poison and disease skills, this may actually be a forever set for you too. Next up, the Back Alley Gourmand set. This is a light armor set that provides universally useful set bonuses, including a 13% bonus to crit damage and healing with the 5-piece. Sourced from Galen, Back Alley Gourmand is a strong contender, so long as you are using a food buff and not a drink buff, which is actually a very easy requirement to meet for most builds. Next is the War Maiden set. This is the Magicka equivalent of Swamp Raider. This light set from Vardenfell is great for builds that deal primarily magic damage, as the 5-piece bonus provides a significant buff. Magic damage is not the same as Flame, Frost, or Lightning though. You'll need to be using skills that specifically deal magic damage. Templar, Nightblade, and Arcanist all have a large number of magic damage skill marks, making this a decent pick for early game. The medium Macabre Vintage set is another one of my recommendations. This is a newer set from the West Weald, and it is an incredibly fun set that is decent for bleed builds so long as you're killing enemies on the regular. This can be excellent when you're farming solo or in lower tier group content where things are dying pretty fast. But it is situational and you might not be able to trigger the 5-piece explosion consistently in group content. Switching gears a little bit here, the next one that I recommend is the Deadly Strike. This one also comes in medium weight and is arguably one of the most meta sets around right now. Deadly Strike is an excellent choice for any beam build out there as it increases the damage your dots and channeled abilities do by 15%. This one comes from Cyrodiil, and random pieces can be purchased from the Bruma Merchant. Or you can just buy what you need off guild traders if you're allergic to PvP. Despite being sourced from a PvP zone, Deadly Strike has been a top tier set for years now and may be a forever set for Arcanists and Templars. Next up, I want to talk about the 2 top crafted sets. So we've got Order's Wrath, which was introduced in High Isle. Order's Wrath was the go-to crafted set for DPS until very recently. It's still the best crafted set for DPS in many cases, offering a flat 8% bonus to crit damage and healing with its 5-piece bonus. Now, crafted sets require you to have researched a certain number of traits in order to craft each piece of it. Order's Wrath happens to require 3 traits, which makes it fairly accessible to new players. If you don't have access to High Isle, you can still craft this set at an attuned crafting station. which you'll typically find available in player guild halls. If you haven't done the research to craft it yourself, or you just don't enjoy crafting, you'll also probably be able to find what you need on guild traders. And finally, the brand new Tideborn Wildstalker set, which requires 5 traits to craft. This set was introduced with Western Solstice. Tideborn Wildstalker is another very solid crafted set that is great in any build that deals heavy direct damage. So if your build is dot heavy, this one isn't for you. Keep in mind that channeled abilities are considered direct damage, not damage over time, so this one does buff skills like Fate Carver. As with any crafted set, both Order's Wrath and Tideborn Wildstalker can be crafted at any armor weight, which makes them good options if you need specific pieces in specific weights. If you're working on a new stamina DPS character, I'd consider pairing Briarheart, Swamp Raider, or Macabre Vintage with crafted Order's Wrath or Tideborn Wildstalker. For Magicka DPS, I'd probably grab Back Alley Gourmand, War Maiden, or Deadly Strike paired with one of those crafted sets. Most sets do come in a predefined weight, light, medium, or heavy. Historically, medium armor bonuses were more ideal for stamina damage dealers, but currently, medium sets are often preferred for all DPS because the passive bonuses they convey are easier to build around at endgame. Notably, light armor provides a passive bonus to offensive penetration, while medium provides a more useful bonus to crit damage. Since it's easier to hit the penetration cap, that light armor bonus might go to waste. Of course, if you're not playing in an optimized group, or your particular build will benefit more from the light armor bonuses than the medium armor bonuses, this is all less relevant. And at the end of the day, a minor redundancy like a bit of overpin is not really that big of a deal. But this is why you will often see many builds either avoid light armor sets altogether or use the weapons and jewelry from the light armor set to save their armor slots for a medium armor set. One other important note, in ESO, the waist piece actually contributes the least to your armor rating, so if you do need to slot one piece of light armor, that's the place to do it. And then of course for solo builds, I will also usually try to slot a heavy armor piece in the chest slot because that contributes the most to armor rating. And finally, it is worth noting that Divines is typically the preferred trait for armor for DPS. However, Infuse can be just as good on the chest, legs, and head pieces, since the larger enchantment boost will benefit more from the infused trait than the other pieces, while Divines grants the same bonus regardless of which piece it's on. So if you're looking to buy some of these sets from other players, you will end up paying a premium for Divines, and can save a little bit of money by switching to Infused or maybe even one of the other traits. And keep in mind, all of these pieces can be transmuted or reconstructed later on with your desired trait. So I always tell new players, don't worry too much about getting the right trait right away. When I was just starting out, I often went for Infused on the chest, head, and legs, Divines on the others where I could get it, or Invigorating or Well Fitted when I just needed to save some coin. No one expects you to have perfectly traded gear as a fresh CP 160. Moving on to more advanced builds, once you're comfortable and ready to take your build to the next level, it's time to consider adding a monster set and maybe an arena weapon. Monster sets should slot nicely into your starter build alongside the two 5-piece sets, since you do have 12 item slots to work with. So a 5-5-2 build can be accommodated. If you're using a 2-bar build, you can also slot an arena weapon on the back bar to benefit from its set bonuses before switching back to the front bar. Now, when it comes to monster sets, there are dozens of these in the game now, and they all offer a 1-piece bonus and a 2-piece bonus. This makes them the perfect complement to those two 5-piece sets. You will need to venture into veteran dungeons to collect monster sets, but you are guaranteed a monster headpiece drop from the final boss of those veteran dungeons. Shoulders are purchased with Undaunted keys at the Undaunted camps, so you will need to collect some keys in order to buy the matching shoulder piece. Both helms and shoulders are occasionally available from the Golden Merchant in Cyrodiil as well, so if you've got more coin than you do time to run veteran dungeons, there is an alternative option there to collect those pieces. But I will say the base game veteran dungeons are all relatively easy, and if you've put together a decent build with two of the starter sets that we covered earlier, you should be well equipped for the challenge at CP 160. Now personally, I'm a big fan of Celine's monster set because it's perfectly on theme for my Warden, even though the range is a little shorter than I would prefer. You will also see a ton of builds recommending Slimecraw, which is primarily because the 1-piece bonus of Slimecraw used to be more powerful than all the other monster sets. But this is still a decent option if you don't have another source of Minor Berserk. Maw of the Infernal is another great recommendation for Daedric summoning builds, and I've actually personally always been partial to Celestrix for stamina builds if you need a bit more range than Celine's offers. But there are too many options to cover here. and your choice may be more dependent on your build. A word of warning though, there is a significant jump in difficulty from veteran base game dungeons to veteran DLC dungeons. If you're new and inexperienced, I do not recommend queuing for veteran DLC dungeons or even using the random vet queue if you're on ESO+. But base game vets like Fungal Grotto or Selene's Web are much more accessible for newly minted CP160 characters. Alright, let's talk about arena weapons, like Thunderous Volley, Merciless Charge, and Crushing Wall. You've almost certainly seen these in builds. Possibly just referred to as the Maelstrom Bow, Two-Hand, or Destro Staff, these are sourced from the Maelstrom Arena in Hrothgar. They also come in a perfected version that offers an extra line of stats, but the normal versions are perfectly fine to start with. Since these weapons are bind on pickup, you will need to farm them yourself, which means that you will need to have access to Orsinium and Hrothgar and be able to clear the arena. But you can actually farm them during an ESO Plus trial if you don't want to pay for ESO Plus or buy Orsinium. Now the reason these weapons are coveted is because they buff specific weapon skills that can keep ticking and reapplying the weapon's enchantment. So what you'll want to do is get your hands on an infused version of your preferred Maelstrom two-handed weapon, enchant it with the weapon or spell damage enchant based on whether you're stamina or magicka, and then slot the appropriate weapon skill, volley, critical charge, or wall of elements on your back bar. Now when you cast that skill, it will be empowered by the arena weapon, and as long as the ground effect is hitting an enemy, it will refresh the weapon or spell damage enchant every 5 seconds. Now, of course, you don't actually need a Maelstrom weapon to pull this off, but the Maelstrom weapons typically provide a boost to the overall DPS from these skills that most 2-bar builds rely on. Now for the final pieces of the puzzle. If you've reached this point, you should have a specific build in mind that you are working towards. Most in-game builds incorporate a mythic item and a trial set, but not all. It is entirely possible in ESO to output high-quality DPS without incorporating endgame gear, but most builds you find online will be using both. So let's talk about Mythics. Mythic items offer a powerful one-piece bonus and are sourced exclusively through the Antiquity system. Mythics are also bind on pickup, so they cannot be purchased or traded. In order to get a mythic item, you will need to level up the scrying and excavation skill lines to the appropriate level. Those are accessible through Greymoor and Western Skyrim. Then you'll need to farm the 5 leads associated with the mythic item and dig up those pieces. Most mythics will require you to venture across Tamriel, potentially to different DLC zones or base game zones to collect all of the leads. Now, depending on the mythic and your RNG luck, this can be a relatively quick endeavor or excruciatingly painful. Now, when it comes to recommendations, I personally use the Velothi necklace in many of my builds because it minimizes the penalty for imperfect light attack weaving. The Oakensoul ring is another popular mythic because it can simplify your rotation by limiting you to a single skill bar, while granting you a bevy of buffs. But there are many other great mythic items too. If you want to incorporate one into your build, you will typically opt to give up the 2-piece bonus from the monster set, leaving you with 2 5-piece bonuses, a 1-piece bonus from the remaining monster piece, and a new 1-piece bonus from the mythic item, a 5-5-1-1 build. And finally, we come to trial sets, the final potential upgrade to your gear in ESO. All trial sets offer a unique 3-piece bonus, which on DPS-centric sets is a 5% boost to damage in dungeons, arenas, and trials. In addition, trial sets' 5-piece bonus often offers more raw power than non-trial sets, and most trial sets have a perfected version which also has an extra line of stats on them. For these reasons, most in-game builds will include 1 trial set in addition to 1 mythic, 1 Maelstrom Arena weapon on the back bar, and 1 non-trial 5-piece set. Trial sets are typically tradable to groupmates for a couple of hours after they drop, so if you want to collect, say, the Slivers of the Null Arca, War of the Depths, or Arms of Relican, you'll need to complete the associated trial and then either loot the pieces yourself or trade for them with your group. With the escalation in raw power we've seen in ESO over the last few years, normal difficulty trials are more accessible than ever, and many guilds have removed any and all requirements to tag along for a guild trial run. Veteran trials still present a meaningful challenge for many groups though, so collecting the perfected versions will likely represent a final tier of gear for your build. But if you are using a build that calls for trial gear, find yourself a decent guild and sign up for their next trial night. I do want to wrap up this video with this takeaway for you though. You don't need a perfect build to get into group content in the Elder Scrolls Online. Many of the starter sets that we discussed today can dish out serious damage, with the right skills anyway. For example, a combination of Deadly Strike and Tideborn Wildstalker on a beam build in the right hands could certainly outperform my Gravelord Warden build. So if you're building towards an in-game build, you can use these sets to help you get there. I know we covered a lot of information in this video, so I've created a written guide to complement it, which I'll have linked in the description below. Within that guide, you'll find links to all the sets that we talked about, as well as other resources that should help you organize your strategy to collect all this stuff. If you found this video helpful, be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more ESO tutorials in the future. Also, let me know in the comments below if I happen to miss any of your favorite starter sets in ESO. And that's going to do it for me today, guys. I will see you all for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.